Oak.
All right, it was a good debate. The decision is a 2-1 for the negative from Peninsula.
All right, I was a squirrel. I'm bad at evaluating theory debates, and I don't like evaluating theory debates, so I don't know. I'll be quick. I don't have a lot of interesting stuff to say. Akil, the dump of don't vote on meta theory arguments in the NR, there's a few of them that I just have on my flow as like a couple of words. So it may be that, you know, it's some argument there that I didn't get that should have done the job for you.
Sure.
The bottom line is at the end of the round, right, the question seems to be who gives rise to more theory debate, right? So, you know, you claim, right, that meta theory leads to, you know, an infinite regressive uplayering, right? And he claims that RBIs are necessary to check bad theory and promote better theory debates and hold debaters accountable for their interpretations. I'll let you ask about individual arguments, but it seems to me that, you know, the uplayering argument just doesn't make a lot of sense, right? I mean, he says, I prevent the theory debates from being initiated in the first place. You know, if I win that, you should have, you know, if I win the content of the meta theory shell, you should have granted me access to an RPI, then, you know, that indicates that there was, you know, proactive abuse that took place when I was put in a situation where either I had to debate the round at a skew in the 1AR, or I had to uplayer with meta theory, right? So your fault for not granting the RPI.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't remember like being flow slow or clear, but that might just be me not paying attention or something. So.
Well, look, so I mean, you know, you read a number of very short arguments in quick succession, and you know, I don't get all of them. So.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, just
yeah.
Question. Is that a paradigmatic thing?
I think it's like a physical human.
No, I mean like the fact. I don't remember if you said slow or clear or not, but I don't. In my memory, I don't think you did. My main question, right? So like, if I was hard to flow, why not say?
Well, look, I mean, I can hear what you're saying perfectly well. Your arguments are just short and sort of blippy, so.
I think, yeah, I think Christian makes a fair point. I think probably where I diverge is I think I viewed the links more in terms of who, like, links to education, specifically on the substantive debate. It seems to be how it was framed. Brent, I think the problem is that there's a couple of framing issues that you're conceding on the meta theory debate that I think allow Akil to mitigate a lot of your offense, right? So you're making this argument about how if I win the meta theory shell, then I show why he's like being proactively abusive. But that argument's a bit strange, and I'm not sure why it's particularly responsive to Akil's argument that that running just like I should get an RVI would set the same norm, right? Like there's like I understand the argument is like it sets a norm on like what kinds of like what the like interpretations should be and like how theories should be read, but there's really just not much of a nuance fleshed out on like what's different between like reading a full out meta theory shell and just saying like, oh, theory should be an RVI on like other theory shells, and then just fleshing that out as a way of propagating that norm. And so I think given that's kind of problematic, because I think that means that I don't know why if RVIs are like good for education, why that's a unique reason to vote for you. That's a framing issue that I think was probably pretty damning on this layer. And your argument about, you have like an argument about like why it logically precludes the structure of the theory shell, which makes sense, but I think similarly Akil's framing issue interacts in a similar way, right? Because it seems that given that like it's indicting only like one practice of the theory shell, if you just read that norm, then that would seem to be sufficient. Would seem to be sufficient for me. I just don't think there's a lot of work done explaining why like apart from like why RVI should be good versus like him running the shell and excluding the RVI is a proactive reason to vote him down in order to sort of set some norm independent of the meta theory shell. So at that point, but even if I think that's the case, the argument you're going for, the strat skew argument, is kind of strange. Because your argument is that then like I like there's like a link to education because I can't like engage with the arguments, but I think there's some responses that that Akil is making here about like why topic education solves the RVI. So this seems to be two competing links to education. I understand that yours is the only one with weighing, but it seems that the warrants here clash a lot because there's because his argument is that if there is no RVI, then there's at least some there is structurally there has to be some reason to go to substance and debate substance, meaning that it seems to me that, and given that Akil in the last speech is contextualizing topical education as the most important education, your weighing analysis it's unclear to me how what enough like weighing analysis is, and given that he has a sort of specific form of topical education that he advocates for. But given that I think that he's winning the framing issues as to why meta theory isn't uniquely a reason to isn't a reason why it precludes the shell. At that point, I think I feel comfortable voting on either his extension of or the extension of the debatability standard coming out of the initial shell. There's something else that I wanted to say. Maybe you have a question I can clarify then, because I'm forgetting to talk about something. I feel like I am. Okay, that makes sense. I feel like I'm forgetting some issue, but if I remember, I'll just speak up.
All right, I'll keep this short since everything's running late. So the short version of this is I have a hard time just generally weighing between meta theory and theory arguments, but I have what kind of pushes it towards the neg on this is first, I think as Mark kind of highlights is the issue that this can kind of be, most of this can be resolved by just granting you the RVI, seeing a kind of huge internal link to education and more importantly topic education seems like there doesn't seem to be a huge link if that's the case. There's an alternative way of solving for this without punishing the negative. In addition to the fact that I obviously he's winning a conceded reason, conceded shell that demonstrates where he's clearly ahead on the T shell. This demonstrates that you are very bad for topic education. So I think just kind of looking at them side by side, because kind of paradigmatically and just in this debate round, it's not entirely clear how I weigh between two different shells which are linking to the exact same voter, and why one necessarily automatically comes first. I think he obviously has a much larger link to education than does your argument, which I see can be resolved absent a meta theory debate. That'll do.
Congratulations, guys. Good job.